Welcome everyone. We are so excited that you are here. Welcome to the Link Optimization Workshop. I am Lauren, the Product Marketing Manager for Plaid Link, and I'm joined here today by my teammate, Clay. Clay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, I'm Clay. I'm an engineering manager and I work with Lauren on Link.
And we are members of the consumer group. So we are super passionate about how we can improve user-facing Plaid experiences like Plaid Link for you and your end users, since we know that it's the front door to be able to truly leverage all of our products. And so what's top of mind for us is how do we create a faster, cleaner, and higher converting account connection process that continues to be secure and transparent. So if we click to the next slide, what we're going to be covering today is we're going to provide an overview of Plaid Link, what to consider when implementing, and how to optimize your integration. Then I'm going to pass the mic to Clay, and we're going to talk more about how to exactly integrate, and he'll walk you through a technical overview. Next slide, please. We're going to handle a little bit of housekeeping. So during our talk, if you have any questions, please add it to the Q&A widget, and we'll answer questions at the end. Also, if you missed it before, we can't see you guys on the Zoom right now, but it would be great to hear about what you're building and what you want to learn. So if you don't mind, it would be great to have you guys drop a message in the chat and say hello and tell us what you are building. And we can go to the next slide so that we can jump in and get right to it. So as you probably know, Plaid builds infrastructure that powers modern digital financial services. And in fact, we connect over 11 financial institutions to over 4,000 apps. And if we click to the next slide, the main way that people experience this connection process is by using Plaid Link. And that's our front end module. And Link has helped nearly 1 in 4 banked Americans connect an account to over 85% of fintech apps. It's pretty wild. And to date, we've connected over 300 million accounts. And Clay, if you don't mind, click it to the next slide for me. You may be aware that we recently updated what Plaid Link looks like. Last year, we released the all-new Plaid Link, which makes the onboarding experience a lot simpler and faster while helping to ensure stable access to user permissioned data. So as part of the update, we've reduced loading times. This version, in fact, is nearly 30% faster than the previous version. And since we designed all of this with WCAG standards in mind, it's even more accessible than before. And with the next slide, we're going to go over how to get more out of Plaid Link. So there are a few suggestions that we're going to cover here today. But I do want to also call out that within our docs, if you just go to plaid.com/docs, there is a list of best practices that you can follow that encompasses what we're going to talk about today, and then even more topics. So first, we recommend that you use LinkKit 1.1.34 or a later version. That's how you'll really be able to get the most out of Plaid Link. We also encourage that you upgrade to Link tokens, since that is how the latest Plaid features and future improvements are going to get built. They're going to be available only on Link tokens. Third, we encourage you to adopt optional features like the new returning user experience, which is designed specifically to help people who have used Plaid before, and it makes it much more convenient and secure for folks to connect to additional apps. And then our fourth recommendation is that you use our automatic institution list feature, and that feature dynamically displays the most relevant institutions for users based on their location and the app that they're using. Both the returning user experience as well as the automatic institution list feature help to improve conversion, and Clay is going to dive into the implementation details of those two optional features in just a second. He's also going to go through a live demo. But before I pass the mic, I do want to underscore that we have recommendations within our docs online. There's all sorts of guidance around Link best practices that will cover these features and more, and the URL for how to get exactly to that link best practices doc is on the screen. All right, now off to you, Clay.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about implementing all of those great features and actually show like a little bit of a demo of how easy it is to adopt a lot of these new features to improve conversion rate in Link. So first, let's talk about Link tokens. Last year, Plaid announced Link tokens, which is a more secure way of integrating Plaid Link for you and your users. Instead of one public key exposed in your website or your mobile app for every single Link usage, you now request a unique token from your backend before every Link initialization. And what this does is Link tokens reduces possible security risks with your Plaid integration. It improves observability on your dashboard logs, so you can trace from every Link open and every Link token to the various logs you're doing on the dashboard. And it also uniquely enables new conversion improving features like the returning user experience. So Link's newest features and conversion improvements will generally only be available using Link tokens. So let's walk through what this looks like to integrate. At a high level, again, your front end or your client will request a new Link token from your backend every time roughly Link is opened. After a user successfully connects to their financial institution, Link will return a public token to your front end, and then you exchange that for an access token on your backend, which you can then use to hit all of Plaid's APIs like transactions did and all the other great things. And so this is like roughly what that looks like diagrammed out. And written out, these are the specific steps to start using Link tokens. So first, your backend calls the Link token create endpoint. This endpoint takes several parameters that previously were passed into Link on the front end, such as product filtering, country selection, and language. Then your front end or your client should retrieve that token and pass it into Link's configuration options. So where you used to pass a public key, you now pass this new Link token. And after, again, the user successfully connects to their financial institution, Link will emit a public token through the onSuccess callback. You should then send that to your backend and exchange that public token for an access token via the item public token exchange endpoint. And then you can then use that access token to get any kind of item level data that you were previously getting. And so kind of to tie those two pieces together, this is sort of how the data flows with our API calls. Start with Link token create on your back end, then on your front end, when you initialize Link, pass that token in, then send it back to your back end to exchange, and then you can continue to use the other Plaid item and product APIs. So let's show a little bit of a demo of how easy this is to make this transition. So I have a little basic Plaid app here. If I hit connect, it opens Link. I can go through, log in. Great. And then in my app, I can now get these are the accounts linked to this item. So this is how I'm currently using a public key. So you can see on my front end code, I've got one public key. It's being used to initialize Link down here, and it's just hard coded for everything. And so I want to migrate this to use Link tokens. And so the steps I need to take are now what I want to do, and your experience can be different for your apps, but when I click this button, that's when I want to fetch the Link token from my backend. And then I'll get that from my backend, pass it back into Link, and then everything else should stay the same. So let's walk through what these changes look like. First, you'll notice on my front end code right now, I'm creating one instance of this Link handler. I don't want to do that quite yet. I want to fetch that token first and then create it. So I'm going to make a little new method to fetch this token from my backend. So I've got my own endpoint about fetching a token. I'm going to parse that into JSON, and then I'm going to create my Link handler and open immediately. We'll talk a little bit about other ways to do this, but this is the way I'm going to do it for my app. So I'll delete this old code. And then I'm going to change this. So instead of opening link when the button is clicked, I'm actually going to run this HTTP request and eventually open link. And the last thing I want to do as well is try to change the user experience to be a little bit more representative of what's happening. So I'm going to change my button to have a little loading text. So let's go back to my app. And I believe I need to change one thing. Yes, get rid of all this at the bottom. Great. Okay, so that was the front end. Let's go to the back end and look at how this link token endpoint works. So if I go to my back end, this was my endpoint for exchanging the token. And this is exactly the same for both public keys and link tokens. I still use the exchange public token endpoint, and then I go and get accounts. My endpoint for creating a link token looks something like this. So this is, again, the endpoint that I expose on my backend. And then I use the create link token endpoint. I'm using the official Plaid Node.js SDKs. But you can use any language you want. And then you also see I'm passing in some of the information we used to pass into link on the front end. So I'm passing in the name of my app. I'm passing in the products I want, transactions in this case, country codes and language. Also passing in user IDs. For my little test app, I don't have a real user ID, but going forward, you should use your own understanding of a user ID to pass in. And then I parse it and then send it back to the front end. So this is my little app. Again, I'll kind of show it real quick. Give it a refresh, loads the token, and then boom, I'm in, and we'll go through the whole process. Great. Fantastic. So that was how easy it is to adopt link tokens. Here's some frequently asked questions we get about link tokens. Am I required to migrate to link tokens? Plaid has no plans to deprecate the original public key method in 2021, so no. But do know that Plaid's Link's newest features and conversion improvements will only be made available when using link tokens. Another question we did is, how long is a single link token valid? It's valid for about half an hour. And this lets you optimize your app's experience, for example, by eagerly fetching the link token if you know it'll roughly be used within half an hour. So in the app that I just demoed, I fetched the link token when the button was clicked. But if I'm maybe going through an onboarding process and I know link will be opened pretty quickly, I can actually fetch it maybe as soon as the page is loaded or as soon as the app is opened, so that I don't have to necessarily wait or change the UX for that loading button. This will change from app to app, which is something to keep in mind if you want to streamline that experience. Another question is, how does update mode work? Update mode works pretty similarly. It now uses the same link token create endpoint for both creating new link tokens and update mode. So you'll end up passing in the prior access token as a parameter to link token create going forward if you want to use update mode. And this is all in our docs, so you can refer to those for more information. So let's talk about some conversion improvements, and let's start with the returning user experience, which is uniquely enabled by link tokens. So how this works is your apps can pass in a phone number and other information about the user that you might already have access to. And then Plaid can actually speed up the authentication process by suggesting previously used financial institutions for that person, or skipping parts of the authentication process like username or password, as you see on the GIF on the right. So sort of the non-returning user experience, you have to go find your institution, enter username and password. But if you're a returning user, in this example, we actually pre-fill the user ID, and you can skip straight, and you can see it's much faster. And you probably observed that there's drop off in link related to people forgetting their usernames and passwords. So hopefully this helps you and your users out a lot. So how does this work? First, you'll need to verify ownership of the user's phone number in your app. Many apps already do this as part of a sign-up process, where You will text a one-time passcode to someone's phone number that they say is theirs, and then you'll verify based on that one-time passcode. Once you've done this, all you actually need to do is pass in that phone number and the timestamp you verified that phone number as an additional parameter into link token create. So it's a very small change. And I'll kind of show what that code looks like. So this is using Node, but again, it's just 2 simple lines to pass in the phone number and the timestamp that you verified that phone number. And then we'll actually be able to give a really meaningful conversion boost to those users who are eligible. So let's dive into this and see what it looks like. I will pull up my backend code. And I'm not collecting, or I don't have any username or user data right now, but we do provide some test data that you can use in Sandbox to simulate this experience. So I'll pass this in, and I will go back to my app. All right, I connect. And there we go. See, these are some of our previously linked institutions that we've detected. And so for example, if I say, oh, I'll go into Chime again, and look, my user ID is pre-filled. All I need to do is put in my password. I get logged in super quickly and have access to all of the data from Plaid. So very, very one line, 2 line change. If you're collecting phone numbers for a really great experience. We also offer what we call pre-authentication, the returning user experience. This allows users to skip entering their username and skip their password in some situations for an even larger conversion improvement. So you saw in the demo, I still had to enter my password. If you're using pre-authentication, then you actually don't need to enter your password. You just need to input a one-time passcode. This is only available to apps that use a subset of Plaid's APIs. So if you're using transactions, assets, investments, liabilities, and balance, then you can use this. But if you're using auth or any of the other APIs, your app won't be eligible. And again, what this looks like is another simple change. You only need to pass in the email address as an additional parameter to link token create. You don't need to verify this, unlike the phone number. But again, apps are only eligible if they use those specific APIs that you see at the bottom. If you try to get auth information or other data using the access token you get back, those requests will fail with an error. So again, just to illustrate, pretty small change, add in an email address, and then you're done, and you get that even larger conversion increase. Here's some of the questions we get about returning user experience. What if I don't verify phone numbers right now in my app? Well, currently we don't offer a returning user method without phone number verification, but we are exploring future ways to securely speed up the authentication process for apps that don't do that or don't have that information at the time link is opened. But we do know a lot of our Plaid developers do, for other reasons, collect phone numbers and verify them. So I would encourage you to check out the returning user experience if you do. How do I test this in Sandbox? We only enable real identity matching in production, but for Sandbox in our docs, we sort of list a few specific phone numbers and email addresses you can use to simulate the various parts of this experience. All right, let's move on to automatic institution select, which will have no code demo because there's nothing you need to do or no code you need to write, which is pretty awesome. So previously, every user would see the same default list of financial institutions when opening Link, if you still selected, for the Plaid's default list. Now we've changed that to be called the automatic institution select, where we will personalize the list of institutions that show up in Link based on users' approximate location and other information. If you previously selected the default Plaid list, we've already updated your app to use automatic institution select. If you have a custom list, then you still are set to that, but you should consider checking this out. So let's talk a little bit about why this matters. To illustrate how powerful this is for improving conversion, here's some financial institutions and where their physical branches are located. You can see some financial institutions are highly geographically concentrated. And so you would expect that the most popular financial institutions in some parts of the country are different than others. And this is one thing that automatic institution select accounts for. And so ask some questions in the Q&A widget below, and Lauren and I will be happy to answering questions. Collecting location. So you don't need to collect location. Plaid infers this from the IP address. So we use sort of standardized methods of mapping IP address to a very coarse approximate location. And that's how we can do that without requiring any effort or changes on your part.
There's another question in here about the automatic institution list and if that is only available in the US or if that's available locally. Clay, do you know the answer to that question?
Right now, it's only US. So we don't optimize in Canada or in Europe right now, but I think it's something that we are looking into.
Awesome, thanks. I'm looking to see which other questions. So there's a question in here around the expected conversion rate increase with the returning user experience. So from the testing that we've done thus far, we've seen a 3% increase related to the returning user experience on average, but that means that also we've seen a significantly higher increase in conversion for certain customers. So it really depends on your app, the use case, and the mix of the customers who are going to be going through Plaid Link, but on average, it's been a 3% increase.
There's a question about, other than sort of our returning user experience, are there other suggestions on how to help folks remember their bank account logins? There's a lot of the stuff Lauren and I work on is how do we improve this? And so I think there's going to be more features in the future to help, either make more folks eligible for the returning user experience for those returning users, or other things we can do to help people find their financial institutions. But nothing we can talk about right now, but stay tuned.
Yes, definitely stay tuned. There's a question in here about where can I find the latest documentation / release notes for link tokens. If you'd like to send that to your dev team. The easiest place to find those is within our developer docs on plaid.com. So I would recommend heading on over there, and there's a section on link tokens. Clay, is there anything else you would add to that?
No, I think that's it. That's good.
All right, cool.
There's a question about, are there plans to introduce institution status info into Link itself? We already do this in some cases, but I think we're also going to explore in the near future how to better communicate that and set expectations with your users. So again, stay tuned. Keep your eye on the newsletters that go out.
Let's see.
There's a question about retiring a link token when a client doesn't use the app anymore, and then how that relates to billing, I think is the gist of the question. So you aren't charged when you create a link token because a link token doesn't create an item yet. It doesn't give you an item access token. You can't use it to get any data linked to a specific financial account. So it will naturally expire after 30 minutes. I don't think there's anything you need to do to manually expire them. I'm looking at our docs real quick to make sure, but I don't think there's anything you need to do, and you don't need to worry about getting charged or anything for creating link tokens that don't end up getting used. There's no billing associated with that.
There's another question around the automatic institution list feature. It says for the location, you mentioned IPs. How do you get around VPNs that drive location?
Yes. So if someone's using a VPN through their phone and it's putting them through a different data center or something that's not immediately where they are, it will look to Plaid like it is in that location. Currently, we aren't doing anything intelligent to figure out, who's using a VPN and whether or not to fall back to the default list or not. But it's something that we've thought about, and it's good feedback to hear that from y'all again. That's something to consider.
And there's another question in here of how do iCloud keychain and similar keychains like Chrome, 1Password work for the username/password autofill when using Plaid Link? And how might Plaid improve that flow?
Yes. So how a lot of those password managers work is they look at the URL associated with the little like username and password box. And a lot of times, most of the time, that's going to be associated with plaid.com in some way because Link is hosted inside of an iframe, and so it won't natively work. There's currently no clear integration for security reasons on how to tell the password managers, hey, this box on plaid.com is actually for your credentials on another property. So I think there's nothing that we've explored, like, are there ways securely to improve that process? I think it's pretty hard to do it securely, which is what matters a lot to us. I think as some financial institutions migrate to OAuth flows, we think that the password managers actually do work in those cases because you get redirected to a different financial institution property or a different mobile app where those will natively work. So that's like one benefit of some of these ongoing OAuth changes that you might be aware of. But for the sort of classic Plaid integration, I don't think there's a lot of improvements we can do securely, which is the thing that we care a lot about. I think there's a couple of questions about manually linking, and I'm assuming this is sort of like via different microdeposits flows. We are exploring ways for apps that use microdeposit flows, which you need to opt into, how to make more call to actions and how to get better instructions. But I don't think we have anything to share today. But that is something we have gotten feedback on how to improve conversion for the manual deposits flows, and it's something that we're working on.
All right, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to join us. As a reminder, this session has been recorded and will be available on Plaid's YouTube channel. So you can certainly go back and reference it. We'll be posting it later this afternoon. And Clay, if you don't mind clicking through to the next slide, this is our contact information. If you guys have questions that we haven't answered today, or if there's something that comes up in the future and you want to send it on over, we are happy to answer any questions that come our way. But with that, I think we're going to sign off. But thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.